Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and I am excited to be here with you today for a couple of reasons. One, because we are exploring the Death card today, and I love talking about this card because there are a lot of misconceptions around it, or a lot of fear around this card. So I'm looking forward to talking about how this card actually supports us in our journey. But another thing is, coincidentally, today is the new moon in Aries. And so today is all about planting our seeds of intention. And we're in this Aries energy, which is all about, new beginnings in of itself, and about having that fire, that inner leadership coming through to support us in doing things in new ways, or going in a new direction, or trying something new. But the key here, it's like the word echoing, is new, 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 something fresh, letting something new bloom, begin to blossom and grow. Well, Death supports us in that as well. So the Death card is all about transformation and transition. So let's just get right into exploring this card today. One of the first things I want to talk about is, yesterday we were looking at the Hanged Man, and I asked you to consider what is holding you back, or what is binding you. So it could be, a fear. It could be a need of acceptance. It could be worry, doubt. So many things that we hold in consciousness that hold us back from moving forward in our spiritual growth, or our understanding, or just trying new things in life. And sometimes when we fear the judgment that others may have, we end up taking on those judgments as our own. And so then that also starts to bind us or restrict us from, fully going forward in our own way, in our own truth, in our understanding. So today, the follow-up to that is, if you did look at and consider what may be holding you back or binding you in the mind, today, the question to ask yourself is it worth holding on to? Are you willing to let it go? Even if the letting go is uncomfortable. So, this energy we're all in right now is really about, a new phase, a new stage. We are changing, and we're always changing. Life is constantly in motion. And we make it really uncomfortable for ourselves when we resist, or when we fight the change, when we fight the energy of transformation. So the Death card, while it is about transformation, it can also speak to the energy of suffering, or that discomfort, which a lot of times is just because of what we may be fighting against or trying to resist. But what happens when we allow ourselves to change, when we finally fall into that space of surrender? And, for a lot of us, there is quite a fight. Like, we will put up a fight, kicking and screaming, before we finally become exhausted or hit rock bottom. And then we feel like there's nothing left but to go forward. That's a form of death. When you hit that bottom stage and you feel like there's nothing left to do, and all you can do is go forward, that's like this energy of death. It's the letting go. It's the surrender. It's the space where we finally give into the change that is going to happen anyway. Now, the beauty in this, like with everything we've talked about, when we allow ourselves to be a part of the change that is occurring for us, we learn, we gain wisdom and understanding. We allow ourselves to stand in the mirror, like we learned with the Judgment card, and acknowledge what it is that we hold. We allow ourselves to pause and suspend the mind like we did with the Hanged Man, and go into deep consideration for our own understanding, having a deeper awareness and new perspective, so that we can free ourselves from the restriction of the mind and what binds us, and finally just let it all go. So the energy of this card, it really speaks to us moving into higher aspects of our self-awareness, and there is change that is constantly happening to support that. You've heard me talk about on other episodes that I call it going through our death cycles. There are these pivotal times, or these significant changes that occur, or circumstances that come up in our lives that really test us to see if we are going to cling to our old way of being. And we come to a space of choice where we can step out of our fear, our discomfort, or our clinging and let go and move forward with new awareness by doing something differently, a new behavior, by acting, by being differently. It's really interesting when we think about this. We're always asking for something new, right? Whether it's a new experience, a new relationship, a new career, a new perspective. We're always looking for what's next. We're always wanting something new. Well, change is required. And again, change is happening whether we want it to or not. Life doesn't stand still for us. And again, it can get really uncomfortable when we resist. And what's funny is a lot of times we will try to cling to our old way, even though it's not what we want anymore, but it's familiar. And sometimes we cling to the old way no matter how uncomfortable it is, because it's not the unknown. We're familiar with it. We know how this works. We know how it plays out. But we have to allow ourselves to support ourselves in our transformation and in our growth. And that's what this is all about, And we looked at the Wheel of Fortune a few days ago, and that reminded us that things are going to come up for us to deal with. We can't avoid anything. And even if it's tough, again, it's necessary for our growth. Now, the beauty about this is looking at the death card, and we'll get to the images of the people in the card, is that it reminds us that no one is above it. No one is above, the suffering. No one is above the challenges of life. It doesn't matter, male, female, rich, poor, no matter who you are. We all have things that we are challenged with, that we are trying to understand, that we are trying to get right. We all have an inner battle that we are dealing with. We all have hurt that we may be working through. Now, granted, we may all work through it differently. We may deal with it differently. It may look or play out differently for each of us, but none of us is above these death cycles or change that occurs to support us in our forward movement and to help usher us into deeper understanding about who and what we are. So let's get into that since I brought it up. If we look at the death card, there's a few elements that stand out. I mean, this card has a lot going on, right? And first, I guess I should say, because we have been looking at the element and the associated planet with the card, the associated element is water. And you can see there's a lot of water in this card. And we've talked about water being related to, emotion, which is something a lot of times we have to deal with when we are going through some type of transformation. And a lot of time our emotion, our feeling is the very thing that makes us so uncomfortable. And the associated planet is Pluto. Now, Pluto is the planet of death and, destruction. But the beauty of it is that it's to tear something down in order to rebuild. So, the element and planet together speak to the quality of the astrological sign Scorpio. And we can even think of the phoenix rising. Sometimes we have to, again, completely burn it down to the ground, hit rock bottom, have that feeling of death. But it's just to help us gain wisdom and understanding, and we can come back with more resilience, more powerful, stronger than before. So there is beauty in this because energy is released when we break down. Even think about any time where you may have tried not to cry. Think of how uncomfortable that is when you're trying to hold back your tears. You feel like you're going to implode. It's really uncomfortable. You're causing some more suffering by trying to hold back what you feel. And then when you finally allow yourself to release, you allow the tears to flow, you allow that energy to move. When it's all said and done with, you have allowed this shift or transition to start to happen. And you start to feel lighter, you start to feel better. Now, of course, different things that we work through take different lengths of time to get through. Some things we can get through right away, some things we have to work through longer. But it doesn't matter. The key is allowing ourselves to go through the process, period. So this card, one of the things, like I mentioned, it really doesn't matter who we are in life. We all have what my mom would say we all have our crosses to bear. We all have our challenges that we are dealing with. So we have the angel of death, we'll call him, up on this white horse. So it looks like a skeleton that is in black armor. And he is holding a flag that has the Rosicrucian rose on it. And he's on top of a white horse. So he is the symbol of death. Transformation, change is coming. But he is approaching you on this white horse. And the white horse is a symbol of purity. So it's like this change that may be disruptive and uncomfortable is coming to support you in some way. There is something beautiful in this change, no matter how scary or uncomfortable it may seem. Again, it's helping to usher you into a new awareness, deeper understanding. It's helping you to let go of the old so that you can experience the new. Now, this is depicted by the rising sun in the background. So we have all of this water flowing, which could speak to the energy of allowing our emotions to flow, this fluidity. But in between that, there are two towers in the background and a rising sun. So out of this emotion, out of this feeling, out of whatever it is you have been working through, the sun rises, which is a symbol of higher consciousness, higher awareness, higher understanding. There is so much growth when we allow ourselves to go through whatever it is we're going through. And it's really about us having that recognition that we do have an opportunity to learn and to grow in the process of whatever it may be. It's always about our perspective. Our perspective is always key. So let's look at the characters, okay? What do you call this guy? The bishop. There's a bishop here in the card, and he's in all yellow. And again, that is a color of like higher awareness. And it looks like he is kind of, has his hands outreached to the angel of death. Now he's standing there, and it's this symbol of him understanding death, him understanding the necessity of change. He understands that this transformation that is occurring is supporting his higher awareness. He understands the letting go, the significance of it. And, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know why this is coming to mind, but the different seasons that we go through, right? Life is cyclical. There's always this process of death, life, and rebirth. Death, life, and rebirth. It plays out in every part of life. It plays out in nature. We go through the different seasons. We're in spring right now. This is the rebirth. And we will get to a point of winter where it's like, the death side of things. But everything will come back into bloom again. Even we think of the symbolism of the sun setting, going into darkness. We could think of that as like a death cycle. But the sun is going to rise again, shedding new light, new awareness after that spell of darkness. Again, if you think about anything that you have gone through in your own life that may have been challenging, that may have been so difficult, even if you thought you weren't going to make it through, you got through it somehow. And surely you got through it with more understanding. And you being able to pick yourself back up through whatever it was is a testimony to how resilient the spirit is. The light is always there, whether we allow ourselves to see it or not. So the bishop, he understands this. He's not, cowering in the face of death. He understands its significance. But then we have the woman kneeled out in front of him, or to the side of the bishop. She's in a white robe and she has flowers in her hair. She's looking away. And it's like she is there almost like asking for it. She's on her knees. Yes, I want change, but I can't face it. And how many times do we do that? Yes, I want something new, but I'm afraid to look. I'm afraid to go through it. I'm afraid of letting go. That's what she's a symbol of, like wanting that change, but being afraid to let go. Being afraid to face whatever we have to face to get through it to the other side. And then in front of her is a child kneeling down, and they have like flowers in their hand, offering it to the angel of death. And that really speaks to the innocence or the purity of a child. They're not afraid. They don't know what's to come, but they're looking directly at it because they're fearless. Again, it speaks to that energy of innocence. And then we have the king. Again, he's flat out on his back underneath the horse, and his crown has fallen off his head. And it's like these transitions, again, it doesn't matter our status. It's not about status. It doesn't matter who you are. We all go through suffering or change or challenges. We all do. It's a matter of how we deal with it. Now, we could look at the king in two ways. I mean, he could have been in resistance, fighting it so hard, and he is dead, which could be a symbol of hitting that rock bottom. When we just completely fall apart and we hit rock bottom because we resisted for so long that we crash into feeling hopeless. Or he could have just surrendered to it. Like, hey, I know this change is coming. Like, who knows? But the point is that with all of these characters, we can look and really think about how we deal with change ourselves. Do we understand the wisdom? Do we understand that it's helping us to grow? Or is it something that we look away from? Do we just wait for change to happen and hope for the best? Or do we play a part consciously, supporting whatever it is we're growing through? Or do we just lay down and die? Just hit rock bottom and oh God, when is this going to be over? Now, the truth is, no matter which one we do, eventually we'll get to the other side, right? Again, that sun is rising out in the horizon, off in the distance. So even though we may not be close to the end of whatever the discomfort may be, there's still light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. There's still wisdom to be gained. There's still understanding. So there's no judgment around where you are in the process. But the key is knowing you have choice in your process. And if you allow yourself to accept the necessary change, if you allow yourself to accept the transformation that is occurring, it'll be much easier for you. Now, one of the things this also reminds me of is, we can't wake up, like we say we're waking up in the spiritual awakening. We can't wake up and remain asleep or unaware. As we go through this process of connecting with ourselves and we do become more aware, it can be uncomfortable. Because just like we talked about yesterday, we then become really aware of that tug of war between like ego and higher self. But you still have choice. You still have choice in how you use the tools of the magician. If you allow yourself to access the higher consciousness of the high priestess, if you have the strength to stand in front of the mirror of justice, if you allow yourself to suspend the mind, go into meditation, and dive deep into yourself so that you can choose to go through your death cycle consciously, knowing that you are gaining wisdom and understanding on the other side. So, everything has to change, and we do have a fear of letting go, and no matter how much we do cling or resist, everything must change. It's just a cycle. It's part of our cycle of life. It's just what it is. And the beauty is when you look at death from like the perspective of it's just like the prelude to a new beginning. There's a rebirth or a new awareness that you are about to gain. It kind of makes me think of, I know I said this isn't about a physical death. It's really about the transitions we go through in this process of our self-healing, our transformation, our awakening. But I was present for my stepfather's death. So when he died, I was there. My mother was there. My aunt was there. And he was in the care of hospice, but he was at home passing away. So he initially, when he was like going through that transition, about to die, there was a bit of resistance there. You could see like the kind of the fight to hold on, or like a little bit of fear or something. And my mother stayed very, very calm and just, she rubbed his head and spoke to him very sweetly, telling him to let go, letting him know that he was at home where he wanted to be. He was surrounded by love and he could just relax and let go. And he did. He started to relax and he was able to transition. But it reminds me of the symbolism in that, reminds me of in our lives what we are trying to grow through, or what change is occurring in our lives. The more we fight, the more we resist, the more the fear builds up, and it just creates so much discomfort. We participate in that discomfort until we do come to a place of surrender. Until we do come to a place of allowing the transition to occur. And when we allow ourselves to step back and relax and really settle into our understanding of what is happening, we support ourselves, making it less uncomfortable, but also knowing that there is light on the other side. So again, one thing to really consider today is, whatever it is that's holding you back, whatever it is that has been binding your mind, is it worth holding on to? Is this feeling of like a revolution happening inside of you where you're like, oh, okay, I'm ready to change, but then are you looking away like the woman? Are you resisting like the king? Or can you stand there in your understanding like the bishop? Now, of course, it doesn't mean it will be so easy. And yes, as we transition and change, things don't always look the way that we expected. But again, you have the strength to get through it. You are resilient enough to get through it. And no matter what it is, perhaps you have to reach out for support. Sometimes we just have to tune into ourselves. But allowing our transition is just a part of supporting ourselves in this cycle of awakening. So I hope that resonates with you today. And if you want to share your interpretations of the card, if you would like to share your experiences, whatever has been coming up for you on this journey, please, again, join us in the Secret Circle. I love to hear from you. Go to my website, yew-chi.com. That's YEWCHI.com. And while you're there, sign up for the newsletter, get access to some free gifts. And I will just say, on the other side of this death, on the other side of this transition, on the other side of letting go, there is so much beauty. And we will get to that tomorrow. So I hope you enjoy this new moon in Aries. Also, Mercury is going direct. So we have a lot to look forward to, energetically speaking. I hope that you have a beautiful day, everyone. And remember to always journey in love.